Thanks, Amy, and thanks everyone for joining the call today. We had an outstanding second quarter, and Chris and I are excited to talk to you about our key results and analysis for the quarter, and we also want to continue the deeper discussion of our growth strategy, Elevate, which we began on our last call. But first, I would like to talk about what we view as an absolutely spectacular publication on optical genome mapping, or OGM, which appeared in the peer-reviewed journal Leukemia on Monday. It describes a study that was conducted by leading oncologists and heme pathologists in which they used optical genome mapping and next-generation sequencing, or NGS, to determine the complete array of single nucleotide variants and structural variants for 101 subjects that had been diagnosed with myelodysplastic syndrome, or MDS, which is a hematologic malignancy that affects blood cell production. Now, the results show that when optical genome mapping was used instead of karyotyping, that 28% of the subjects in the study had either a different prognostic risk score or additional structural variations that were not found by karyotyping, or both. And when the results of an 81-gene NGS panel and those of optical genome mapping were combined, the findings indicated that at least one clinically significant clonal abnormality was found in 97 out of the 101 subjects. This research demonstrates that among the modalities tested, optical genome mapping and next-generation sequencing taken together provide the most comprehensive set of genome variants for MDS analysis in this study, and therefore suggest the potential for a new standard in cytogenetic and molecular analysis for heme malignancies altogether. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the second quarter results, and Chris will go into some more detail about them. Total revenue for the quarter was $6.7 million, which is another record for us and represents growth of 73% over the revenues from the second quarter in 2021. We sold 3,394 flow cells in the second quarter, which represents 24% growth over the second quarter of 2021, and we analyzed 373 samples in our laboratories, which represents 96% growth over Q2 2021. Finally, we ended the quarter with an installed base of 196 Sapphire systems, which represents 62% growth over the 121 systems installed at the end of the second quarter of 2021. Now, at this point, I'd like to turn the call over to Chris, and after Chris's remarks, I'll discuss our growth strategy, Elevate, and provide some updates across its 5 strategic pillars. Chris?
The second quarter of 2022 was another outstanding quarter for Bionano. As Eric mentioned, we recorded significant year-over-year revenue growth and continued growth in the installed base of our Sapphire OGM systems. We believe this reflects the building excitement in the market about the capabilities of OGM that is driving the momentum we are seeing. We couldn't be more pleased with the execution our team demonstrated despite the ongoing headwinds in the overall market. And we remain on track to achieve our full year 2022 revenue and instrument placement guidance. Revenue in the second quarter of 2022 was $6.7 million, representing an increase of 73% over the second quarter of 2021 and our highest quarterly revenue to date. We came in above our previous guidance range of $6.0 to $6.5 million for the quarter, mainly due to stronger than expected instrument sales in Europe and China and improved reimbursement in our clinical services business. Our gross margin in the second quarter came in at 22% compared to 37% in the second quarter of 2021 and 15% in the first quarter of 2022. As we have mentioned previously, the year-on-year decrease was primarily due to low yields on our chip consumables produced at one of our contract manufacturers. We are making good progress on improving yields, and we expect to see continued improvement in our gross margins in coming quarters. Second quarter 2022 GAAP operating expense was $33.6 million compared to $17.9 million in the second quarter of the prior year. Q2 2022 non-GAAP operating expense was $26.4 million compared to $16.1 million in the second quarter of 2021. Q2 2022 non-GAAP operating expense excludes $5.8 million in stock-based compensation and $1.4 million in amortization of purchased intangibles. The year-over-year increase in OpEx was primarily due to increased headcount-related spending, increased R&D expense, and increased marketing expenses. Our capitalization remains strong with $187.3 million in cash equivalents, and available for sale securities as of June 30th, 2022. And as I mentioned in the beginning of my remarks, we are on track to achieve our full-year revenue guidance in the range of $24 to $27 million. We expect Q3 revenue to be in the range of $6.7 million to $7.1 million. With that, I'll turn the call back over to Eric.
In addition to a generally improving macro environment in our target markets, we believe our Elevate strategy is working well. The optical genome mapping story is continuing to build, showing that not only can OGM be a powerful tool for identifying structural variants, but that when combined with next-generation sequencing, the two methods have the potential to address a number of challenges that cytogenetic and molecular pathology labs have been facing for decades. I'd like to spend the remainder of the call discussing our growth strategy, which we call Elevate, by drilling down into its strategic pillars and highlighting some of the key progress we've made. Now, the first pillar is expanding the commercial traction and validating optical genome mapping with Saphyr. Our goal for OGM is for it to become a standard tool used routinely for genomic applications in clinical, research, and industrial settings. To meet that goal, we need labs using OGM and talking about it. We believe expanding the install base of our Saphyr system gets that done. This quarter, we grew the install base to 196 systems, which puts us on track to hit our year-end goal of 240. And the addition of 20 systems in the second quarter is 67% higher than the 12 systems that were added in the first quarter of 2022. We believe the growing number of labs around the world with Saphyr systems is creating a community of OGM users that can help propel the methodology forward through their presentations and publications and workshops and advocacy throughout consortia and medical policy working groups. During the second quarter of 2022, OGM was part of the agenda and content at a number of conference events across the United States and Europe. We saw our first Spanish optical genome mapping user group meeting with over 100 participants, co-hosted by José Carreras Institute and Hospital del Mar in Barcelona. We have 8 Saphyr systems installed in Spain, and we are starting to see momentum there and believe others across Europe are watching closely. With all of the growth in install base and the additional utilization that happens with it, there is more OGM data in the world. Those data get presented at meetings and eventually published, and we're really happy with the number of papers that have come out year to date. We appear to be on track to beat the number of 184 papers published last year, but something that really stands out to us in 2022 so far is the significant shift in the distribution of topics contained within these publications. Over the course of 2021, about 60% of papers that were published covered non-human applications of OGM and 40% covered human applications. Well, that picture has flipped in a year. And so now when we look at 2022 publications to date, it's actually 60% human. It's a really significant shift in the overall focus of OGM, much more towards human translational and human clinical research. And what we believe is that this shift is significant because we believe that these areas will drive more consumables utilization in the long run. And I also want to make a comment about what looking at publications really means. Publications are a leading indicator of future potential adoption, but they're a lagging indicator of the work that was happening at the time that they were published. So this picture that we're seeing now probably represents the distribution of utilization that's been happening over the last couple of years. And so when we think about the future, that distribution is going to shift a lot more towards human because that's where optical genome mapping is being adopted today. Now, the second pillar of Elevate is to delight our customers with robust products. We strive to learn from our customers and what might be done to improve the Sapphire system. Our product development pipeline currently includes a number of products that are designed to either simplify the optical genome mapping workflow, make it faster, or make it perform better. One exciting advance was the announcement in June of the Longstream Vantage system by us in Hamilton. This product would be the world's first walk-away automation solution for ultra-high molecular weight DNA extraction. We expect it to significantly reduce time to results for OGM, reduce hands-on time, and to improve OGM performance by standardizing the process connected to the DNA isolation. We have additional products planned for release later this year, including updates to our DNA isolation protocols and to our labeling chemistries, as well as the integration of optical genome mapping data into our NX Clinical software platform. We believe all of these products will be transformative for our workflow and truly delight customers. Now, the third pillar centers on clearing the path for reimbursement of optical genome mapping and changing medical practice to include optical genome mapping into medical society guidelines. Our labs in San Diego, which are part of the Bionano Labs business, which also includes Lineagen, is planning to develop laboratory-developed tests, or LDTs, for optical genome mapping in genetic disorders and hematologic malignancies. We're working towards CLIA certification and plan to begin releasing LDTs once that process is completed later this year. We believe that these LDTs can help us work with third-party payers to obtain coverage for optical genome mapping assays. The path to reimbursement of LDTs by payers requires several key steps. We believe that an important step is obtaining a Category 1 CPT code. In the first quarter of this year, we submitted our application for a Category 1 CPT code for OGM. We received helpful feedback on the application, which was that, firstly, the American Medical Association would like us to resubmit the application and break it into two separate codes, one code for genetic disorder testing and one code for cancer. And I would like to add that this is how codes for other solutions like microarrays and sequencing have gone through the process. Secondly, they're looking to see more peer-reviewed publications on optical genome mapping, which is why we're so excited about publications like the one I talked about coming from MD Anderson. And specifically, they're looking for more publications that are coming from U.S. sites, as well as additional adoption of optical genome mapping. And so based on that feedback, which we thought was very constructive and positive, we decided to withdraw the application while we address these points, and we plan to resubmit the application in early 2023. Now, while we were hopeful that we could get the code approved on this first attempt, we understand that it's very common in this process for it to take more than one round of applications. And in the meantime, we know of labs with LDTs that are based on OGM that have attained so-called PLA codes, or proprietary laboratory analysis codes, and they are now going through the process of establishing pricing for these codes. And we know of other labs that are using existing CPT codes and getting reimbursed for them. So this process will continue and be ongoing for us. Now, to achieve change in medical practice by getting optical genome mapping included into medical guidelines, it's clear that we need data on thousands of samples showing the benefits of optical genome mapping over standard of care. And we're actively building that data and have been through our family of clinical studies. We believe if the results of these studies are compelling, that they could provide sufficient evidence to support optical genome mapping being incorporated into medical society recommendations and guidelines, which would make adoption of optical genome mapping even easier for labs that are following guidelines very closely. We've been making great progress in these clinical studies throughout the first half of 2022. As you may know, they are directed at 4 major areas: pre- and postnatal genetic analysis, hematologic malignancies, which includes leukemias and lymphomas, and solid. Now, these studies are designed to demonstrate the utility of optical genome mapping as an alternative to traditional cytogenomic methods by evaluating these primary endpoints. Number one is concordance with standard of care, and there's a lot of evidence that's been demonstrating this concordance, but we're hopeful that these studies will demonstrate that through close to 1,000 patients in each of the arms. Number two is to increase the success rates for finding pathogenic variants. And so what we know is that traditionally in laboratories practicing cytogenetics, 50% or more of the time, samples are returned with no findings of pathogenic events. And so if we can improve upon that, we think that it's going to be an important factor in inclusion in these guidelines. Thirdly, we are evaluating the health economic impact of optical genome mapping. We know that it streamlines workflows, and we believe that that streamlining process reduces costs, but we will also look at the efficiency of performing optical genome mapping and its success rates compared to other platforms and technologies that are in use routinely. And fourth, we'll be looking at the potential for revising protocols for patient management. And that type of outcome is something that was measured in the MD Anderson study. And so we know that we have the potential to make significant progress there. Now, 3 of the 4 studies in our portfolio are underway, and the 4th, which will cover solid tumors, will begin initially in the 4th quarter of this year. 2 key milestones that were anticipated and previously announced for the second half of 2022 are to complete our postnatal study and start the interim publication on our prenatal study. And we believe we're on track with both of those anticipated milestones. Now, the 4th pillar of Elevate is to advance our product to support higher market adoption and entry into new markets. We've been working on new products, 2 very important ones. One is a version of our NX clinical software, which was developed by BioDiscovery, and our new version will integrate optical genome mapping alongside the other data types that are in use today. And I can tell you that when we've been talking about this capability at conferences, including at a very productive meeting we had recently at the Cancer Genomics Consortium annual meeting, that users see this single view for data analysis as being something that has a lot of power for them, and so they're very excited about it. We've been making progress with the software. It's begun an evaluation process with our clinical team as they use it to start analyzing their clinical studies data. We expect that team's feedback to propel additional development in this release of software, and we believe that that release is on track for the end of this year. Another very significant product that we're working on is the next generation version of our Sapphire system. We are pleased with the progress on this system that we've made so far, and we look forward to placing pre-commercial version of that platform by the end of this year. In addition to the higher throughput that system offers, it will include random sample access that should allow for short turnaround time or stat processing, and the ability to scale from 1 to 6 systems working in unison, which would bring about another dramatic increase in throughput overall. We also expect that to be part of an integrated workflow with automation of sample preparation and this new version of the NX clinical software. So our product development pipeline is robust, and there are a number of catalysts that will be released into the market going forward. And finally, as the 5th pillar of Elevate, we're focused on making software a strategic driver of our business. In addition to working on integrating optical genome mapping within NX Clinical, the software itself is a very powerful platform that can be used in a broad array of genomics applications, even if it doesn't involve optical genome mapping, such as applications with microarrays or next-generation sequencing. In fact, we believe anyone using microarrays or whole genome sequencing or NGS panels would benefit from using NX Clinical software for a number of applications, including detection of copy number variations and their analysis, together with the analysis of single nucleotide variant. We also believe many of these labs will have an interest in OGM, and in Q1, we launched a version of NX Clinical with an integrated genomic scar analysis for homologous recombination deficiency, or HRD. And this feature provides comprehensive, consistent, and automated analysis of biomarkers from NGS as well as microarray, and in fact, we'll be able to determine HRD scores using OGM as well. And all of this will help clinical researchers stratify therapeutic response across multiple tumor types. And so what I hope you will see is that this software platform is something that can really open doors independently of its ability to analyze optical genome mapping data, and we see that as a driver of future growth for Bionano. And so in closing, I want to reiterate that we are really excited about our continued growth in 2022. As I mentioned earlier, we are on track with all of our outlined Elevate milestones, and we look forward to updating you on our progress going forward. We would also like to share that we are in the early stages of planning for an investor event that we will hold in the first quarter of 2023. And there will be more information to come about that.